House Resolution 2233, proposing an amendment to House Joint Resolution 156 relating to the removal of the Harry F. Byrd Sr. statue on Capitol Square.
The chair recognizes Gentleman Kenney to explain the bill.
Good day, Madam Speaker, members of the body. I will be delivering a resolution on a matter not concerning Democrats or Republicans, but concerning the matter of right and wrong. In our society, there are a great many obstacles that many or all must walk by in order to get anywhere in our great country. In a great time of racial divide, we must all find a way to unite and remove these obstacles that separate us from one another. One of these obstacles is the statue of Harry Flood Byrd. Byrd was known as one of the biggest segregationists of his time and in Virginia history. Byrd very strongly opposed the integration of public schools. Harry Flood Byrd then created the political tactic massive resistance. It began to infect and corrupt the legislature, most of the Democratic Party. Massive resistance led to the closure of many public school systems in Virginia between 1959 and 1964 as a way to avoid integration of blacks and whites. This policy created a large subset of African American students, Virginians by right, who were denied the right and quality of an education for several years in several counties of Virginia. Those students, many of whom are still alive, are known as the Lost Generation. Then he used his influence in the General Assembly to pass laws forbidding any integrated schools from receiving state funds. He then gave the governor the authority to close those schools and then use race to determine which schools would attend. This wretched approach to deny African American Virginians the right to a quality education went through the 1960s, hurting many young men and women. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life, liberty, and the persons of a distant people who never offended him. Byrd has declared, if we organize the southern states for massive resistance to this order, I think that it's time the rest of the country will realize the racial integration is not going to be accepted in the South. These are his words. This is what he believed, this is where he stands, and this is what still stands outside our capital. Rightful liberty is an obstruct action according to the will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. I do not add within the limits of the law because the law is often a tyrant's will, and always do so when they violate the rights of the invalid. We need to move forward. Honor, justice, and humanity are the words of Thomas Jefferson, and they should govern our decisions to not pay tribute to the figure of Virginia history who did not live up to these ideals and directly hurt so many Virginians. This is what I come before you today to my appeal to you to remove the statue of Harry Flood Byrd. I ask that the bill be engrossed and passed on to the third reading.
The floor is now open for debate. Gentleman Byrd has the floor.
Yeah! I'd first like to say that this gentleman only states the bad stuff he did, not the good stuff, such as pay-as-you-go, which created many of the modern-day toll roads in Virginia. Also, Harry Flood Byrd was the youngest governor to ever be elected, and he served in both state Senate and U.S. Senate. So by removing this statue, I think you're removing a figure of history. I know that he is bad. However, you can't just remove history. If we took down all these statues, such as Monument Square, it would be known as Monument Avenue. Most of the statues would be gone. Look at George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. They all had slaves. They were racist. You got to understand that. We were in the southern states. We were the Confederates. And history facts show that this was the last state to end segregation. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I urge you to not vote for this bill.
Gentleman Warren has the floor.
I thank the gentleman for his sentiment, and the bill is focused.
Gentlemen do not have the floor. Gentlewoman Warren has the floor.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, if your argument is to take down the statue because the man was a segregationist, then let's keep it up to remind us of the time and so that history does not repeat itself. This bill would use taxpayers' money to take down a privately funded statue, if you would read the plaque in front of it. Many great men throughout history have done bad things. For example, as Delegate Byrd said, Thomas Jefferson, he owned slaves, yet we recently put a statue of him in the newest edition of our Capitol. If we tear down the statue, where does it end? Will we tear down the statue of anyone who has ever done something bad? Lastly, this bill is making an effort to censor out the past, when in reality we cannot erase history. I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to reject this bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman Kenney has the floor.
The fact of the matter is that it is not removing history. You can still read about Harry Flood Byrd in a history book. And that removing the statue would not be removing history. It is removing the legacy of massive resistance. And the legacy of massive resistance should not be able to stand as a statue in the People's Square after denying thousands of Americans the right to an education, specifically based on race. And I also speak to Mr. Byrd's bill,
I don't have a bill.
Well, I'm speaking also to his
Statement.
Gentleman Byrd does not have the floor.
Removing the statue of Harry Flood Byrd is not talking about the statue on Monument Avenue or Thomas Jefferson or Lee. It is specifically focusing on the statue of Harry Flood Byrd, nothing more. Thank you.
Gentlewoman Cranwell has the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Speaker. One question. What will you replace the statue
Will
with?
the gentleman yield for question?
I yield.
What will you replace it with? Because you have multiple choices. You could put Winston Churchill for when he visited, Marquis de Lafayette for fighting with us in the Revolution. Like, it's pretty much endless.
The point of the bill is not to replace the statue. The point of the bill is to take down the statue.
Would you yield for another question?
I yield.
The square was kind of, like she said, privately dedicated, so you're taking away someone else's money with other, like, I'm just saying, people paid for that, and, like, it was privately funded, so you really don't have the right to take it down.
Well, I thank the lady for her question, and I appreciate her sentiment. But there will be a private donation site to removing the statue, just as it was done to put up the statue. Thank you.
Gentlewoman Shuffle-Barker has the floor.
Madam Speaker, I move the pending question.
All those in favor of moving the pending question say aye. Aye. All those who oppose? No! No. The pending question has failed. The debate continues. Gentlewoman Anna Keff has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak to the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Madam Speaker and members of the House, Bill number 2333 is a bill to tear down history. If we take down this statue, then we are trying to ignore what this man has done. History is what happened and what we cannot control. This man did what he thought was in the best interest for his people. If we take down this statue, we are discouraging people to speak their mind. If this is just a statue, and if we tear this piece of art down, we are using taxpayers' money on something that doesn't affect us on our normal lives. We can spend that money to help with something like schools. I hope it will be the pleasure of the House to reject this bill.
Gentleman Day has the floor.
Hello. Madam
I'd like to
Speaker.
speak on the bill.
The gentleman has the floor.
Okay, so I understand both sides and where both sides are coming from, but what I'm saying is, like, I've asked many people, what do they think when they hear Harry Flood Byrd? I'm saying I understand the good stuff he's done, and I know the bad stuff that he's done, but what I'm saying is, why is the first thing people think is he does something bad? Why should we have a statue that represents badness? Thank you.
The debate has now ended. The members should get ready to vote. Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 6, noes 29.
Ayes 6, noes 29. The bill has failed.